In a bright and shining part of the galaxy, there was a huge place called the Galactic Council. This council was not on any planet, but on a space station that floated between stars. It was made of glass and silver metal, and it glowed like a star. Inside, many different alien leaders sat around a large round table. Some were tall with green skin. Some had big eyes, and others looked like floating jellyfish. They all came from different planets. But today, they were here for one reason: to talk about Earth. One alien, named Helzer, stood up. He had 4 arms and purple skin that sparkled under the lights. He spoke in a strong voice. Earth has grown fast. Their science is rising. Soon, they will explore more of space. We must act now. Another alien, short and blue, nodded. Yes, humans are not ready for the galaxy. They are not like us. They should serve us, not stand beside us. Many aliens agreed. They clapped or made sounds of approval. Only one did not speak. His name was Zarnak. He was a young alien from a planet called Velar. His skin was silver, and his eyes glowed yellow. He had visited Earth once, long ago. He remembered warm people, curious minds, and soft music in the air. He liked humans. He thought they had something special. But no one asked Zarnak what he thought. He sat in silence. Helzer raised his hands again. Let us vote. Should Earth become a work planet for the Council? Should humans help us, learn from us, and follow our ways? One by one, the aliens pressed buttons in front of them. A green light meant yes. A red light meant no. As the votes came in, the green lights filled the screen. The final count was 96 yes, 3 no, and 1 unsure. The vote was passed. Earth would now be under the rule of the Galactic Council. Zarnak felt a cold chill inside. He did not vote yes. He did not vote no. He did not press anything. He simply sat still and thought. He knew humans were not perfect. They made mistakes, but he also knew they were fast learners. They were not weak. They were only quiet. For now. After the vote, Helzer smiled. We will send a message to Earth. A message to tell them the good news. That we will guide them now. But Zarnak saw it differently. It was not good news. It was not help. It was control. And Earth might not like it. He stood and walked out of the meeting. No one stopped him. No one asked him anything. He walked to his own room and closed the door. Then he sat by the window and looked at a small blue light in the sky. That light was Earth. He touched the glass and whispered to himself, "Be ready." At that same moment, on Earth, life was normal. People were walking in cities, driving cars, talking, laughing, and living. They did not know that far away, across stars and space, many voices had decided their future. No human had been invited to the vote. No human had even known there was a vote. But things were about to change. In a small lab in the mountains, a scientist named Dr. Mira looked at a strange signal on her screen. It had just arrived from space. It was not like anything she had seen before. The message was not in words, but in light and sound. She worked for hours to understand it. Slowly, a shape formed on her screen. A symbol. A voice. Then a short sentence in English. Earth is now part of the Galactic Council. Do not worry. We will guide you. Mira sat back in her chair, confused and surprised. What is this? She whispered. Who sent this? And why? She showed it to other scientists. Some laughed. Some thought it was a joke. Some were afraid. But Mira did not laugh. She looked up at the sky and felt something she could not explain. Later that night, the stars above Earth seemed to shine a little brighter. And somewhere in deep space, Zarnak watched Earth from his window. He opened a small old book he had brought from Earth. Inside, there was a photo of a smiling human child. Under the photo, there were simple words written in Earth's language. Kindness is not weakness. Zarnak read the words again and again. Then he made a choice. He sat at his table, opened his own old machine, and began to send a message. It was quiet, hidden, and secret. No one else in the council would know. Only Earth would receive it. His message was short, just 5 words. They are coming. Be ready. And with that, the story of Earth's great test began. The signal had arrived, and Earth was not the same anymore. Dr. Mira stayed in her lab all night. She looked at the blinking lights on her screen again and again. The message from space played over and over. Every time she heard it, her heart felt heavy. Not because it was loud or scary, but because it was so calm. Too calm. Earth is now part of the Galactic Council. Do not worry. We will guide you. Mira was a scientist, but she was also a thinker. She believed in patterns, in timing and the feeling behind words. This message, she felt, didn't sound like help. It sounded like someone had already made a decision, and that decision didn't include any human voices. She sent the message to a few other scientists around the world. One in Canada, one in Japan, one deep under the sea in a research base. All of them received the same strange transmission. All of them listened. All of them sat in silence. By the next day, something strange started to happen. The internet slowed down in certain places. A few satellites stopped sending data. One telescope in Chile picked up odd flashes in the sky. People blamed weather. Others said it was just a glitch. But the scientists who had heard the message knew better. They didn't say anything out loud, but they shared a single thought. Something is coming. In quiet corners of the world, leaders of nations gathered, not in big meetings, not with lights and cameras, but in secret, far from the public eye. The message had reached them, too. They were not sure what it meant, but they knew it was not a joke. And they knew they could not panic the people. One leader said, "Do we answer the message?" Another shook her head. "No, not yet. We wait." But even as they waited, others prepared. Some engineers started checking old machines built for deep space contact. Pilots were called back from leave. Satellites were quietly moved to new positions. All of this was done with no news, no noise. On farms, in cities, in schools, life went on. People didn't know that something big had changed, but some could feel it. Children asked their parents why the stars looked different. Pets acted strange. Even the wind in some places felt new, as if it carried a message no one could hear. Far above Earth, just beyond the moon, a small object slowed down. It wasn't shaped like any human spacecraft. It didn't have windows or wings. It moved without sound, glowing softly, almost like a dream. This was the first visitor. But it didn't land. It only watched. Back in the Galactic Council station, Zarnak sat quietly in the learning room. Aliens from other planets walked past him, laughing and talking. They were excited. To them, Earth was now part of the great plan. They thought humans would soon send messages back, asking for help, asking what to do next. But Zarnak knew humans better. They would not shout. They would not beg. They would listen. They would watch. And then they would decide. He checked the Earth channel again. His secret message had gone through. But there was no reply. That didn't bother him. Humans didn't always answer right away. Sometimes their silence meant they were thinking. And thinking was powerful. On Earth, Dr. Mira stepped out of her lab for the first time in days. She looked up at the sky. The sun was setting, and the first stars were starting to show. She took a deep breath. Something inside her told her that Earth must not act too fast. It must not shout into the dark. It must first understand. So she walked to her garden and sat near the old radio tower behind her house. She took out an old notebook and began to write. Not a report, not a warning, but a simple question. What do they want? And then right under it, another line. What do we become if we follow them? She didn't have the answers yet, but she knew something that many have forgotten. Earth had always found its own path. Sometimes slow, sometimes strange, but always its own. The night grew quiet. Somewhere far away, machines moved. Eyes watched, minds wondered. But Earth, in its silence, was not afraid. It was thinking. And when Earth thinks, something new is always born. The night sky over Earth had never looked so peaceful, yet so full of questions. People went on with their lives, unaware of the silent watchers floating just beyond the moon. But a few minds on Earth were awake to the change. They were quietly working, thinking, listening, not just to the message from the stars, but to each other. Dr. Mira was one of them. Her home lab had turned into a quiet center of connection. Scientists from different parts of the world messaged her using private channels. They didn't trust open networks anymore. Something about the message from space made them feel like something was always listening. Mira had no proof, only a feeling, but she trusted that feeling. A few days after the signal arrived, something else happened. Not a ship, not a sound, a pattern. Radio telescopes in different parts of the world picked up waves of soft, repeating pulses. They weren't like normal signals. They weren't noise from stars or planets. These pulses followed a pattern. Long, short, long. Then silence. Then again, almost like a heartbeat. Mira and her team checked the signal carefully. It wasn't human. It wasn't natural. And most importantly, it wasn't the same as the first message. This was something else. A different source. Maybe someone else trying to speak. Or warn. Meanwhile, deep under the ocean in a quiet lab, an engineer named Ravi was looking at old satellite records. He found something strange. Just before the first message arrived, one of the deep space sensors caught a flash of light. It was not from a star. It moved too perfectly, like it had purpose. And then it was gone. Ravi sent this to Mira, who sent it to a friend in Antarctica who studied cosmic particles. The friend confirmed something even stranger. The flash left no trace. Nothing measurable. It was as if it had skipped through space without touching anything. What moves like that? Mira whispered. Back in space, the Watcher ship near the moon remained still. It did not shine. It did not send messages. But it moved, a tiny bit, each day. Slowly, carefully, it adjusted its position, always staying on Earth's dark side. No human leader spoke about it. No big announcement was made. But quietly, some people were moved from certain cities. Flights were delayed. Schools in some areas were given early breaks. All done with gentle words, not fear. Most people thought it was normal. But a few saw the pattern. One such person was a boy named Leo, just 12 years old. He lived in a small town in South America. His father worked for the weather station on a tall mountain nearby. One day, while visiting his father's work, Leo saw something on a monitor, a tiny blinking light near the moon. No one else noticed, but Leo watched it. Every night after that, he would climb the hill behind his house with an old telescope and watch the sky. And every night, the tiny light was there. He told his teacher, but she smiled and said it was just a satellite. Leo didn't believe her. He started writing a journal. Every night, he drew the position of the light. After a few days, he noticed something. The light moved just a little, but always toward Earth, just like something watching and waiting. In the Galactic Council station, Zarnak felt uneasy. The other aliens were preparing gifts for Earth. New technology, energy crystals, clean machines. They were sure Earth would be thankful. They didn't see the signs. But Zarnak did. He had just received a quiet message from a contact on Earth. It came through an old channel, hidden deep in an old Earth satellite. The message was only 2 words long. Still thinking. Zarnak smiled softly. He knew what that meant. Earth was not panicking. It was not rushing. It was learning. It was watching. And then came something no one expected. The soft repeating pulses that had been echoing through radio telescopes suddenly stopped. Total silence. Then, after a pause, a new signal came. This time, It was clear. No music, no strange patterns. A calm voice. It didn't sound like the first message. It wasn't official. It was. A gentle wind moved through the trees outside Dr. Mira's home. The sky was cloudy that evening, hiding the stars. But Mira wasn't looking up anymore. She was looking inward, into patterns, voices, strange messages, and one truth that kept coming back. Earth was being tested. The words from the unknown voice still echoed in her mind. You are not alone. Be careful who you trust. Who sent it? What did they mean? Was it a warning? A friend? Or something else? She didn't have those answers, but she knew one thing for certain. Things were changing faster than anyone had planned. Elsewhere, Leo sat in his room, flipping through pages of his notebook. Since the message, the blinking light near the moon had started to move more often. Some nights it stayed still. Some nights it vanished completely. But when it returned, it always came back closer. He wrote down each shift in his book, using a ruler and pencil. He didn't tell anyone anymore. He didn't need to. He was sure something was watching Earth. And maybe, just maybe, watching him. One day, his father left the weather station early and came home with a strange look on his face. Leo listened as his father spoke to his mother quietly. Words like emergency meeting, satellite blind zones, and early weather drills floated through the air. His mother asked if they should worry. His father just shook his head and said, I don't know. Far away, in a floating lab above the Pacific Ocean, Ravi stared at a black screen. No new signals had come since the voice. His sensors still worked, but the silence felt too perfect. He reached out to Mira, who was already waiting. I feel like we're being paused, Ravi typed. Mira answered, or watched to see what we'll do. They agreed to not send any new signals out, not yet. Instead, they focused on understanding. They played the voice over and over, testing it for clues. The way it paused between words, the tone, the echo. It sounded like it came from inside Earth's orbit. The silence continued to stretch across Earth, thick and uncertain, as the days turned into weeks. Life seemed to pause, almost as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. People went about their routines, but with the weight of the unknown hanging over them. Something had changed. No one could quite explain what, but there was a quiet tension in the air. The stars, once a comforting backdrop to the night, now seemed distant, almost indifferent. Dr. Mira sat at her desk, her eyes scanning the data she had gathered from the past few weeks. The strange signal, the mysterious voice, the sudden disappearance of the light near the moon. It was all too much to ignore. She had sent messages to her colleagues around the world, but the replies were always the same. Nothing. Just silence. But Mira couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming, something that would shake the world to its core. She sat in her chair, her fingers drumming softly on the table, as she stared out the window at the darkening sky. The silence was unnerving. It felt like the calm before a storm. In the quiet corners of the world, people were beginning to notice small, strange things. Electronics that had been working perfectly for years suddenly started to malfunction. Streetlights flickered in the evenings, and people spoke of hearing odd sounds. Whispers, voices in the wind, but nothing that anyone could quite place. It was as if the earth itself was beginning to speak in ways it hadn't before. Across the ocean, Ravi worked late into the night, his mind racing with thoughts. The last message, the one that warned Earth to be careful who it trusted, had unsettled him. What if this wasn't just a warning from an alien species, but a warning from someone who had already made the mistakes Earth was about to make? What if this was the same message, passed down from one civilization to the next, each one leaving its mark on the others? He paused in his thoughts, glancing up at the screen in front of him. The monitor flickered, and for a brief moment, a strange symbol appeared. An ancient, almost unreadable shape that seemed to pulse with a soft glow. He blinked and it vanished, leaving only a blank screen. Ravi wasn't sure if he'd seen it at all, but the feeling it left behind was unmistakable. He wasn't alone. Meanwhile, Leo's eyes stayed glued to the sky. He had spent the last few nights watching the stars through his small telescope, searching for any sign that the light would return. His parents had grown concerned, and his friends had begun teasing him about his obsession. But Leo didn't care. He felt like he was the only one who knew something was wrong. Something was coming, and he couldn't shake the feeling that, in some strange way, he was meant to see it. One night, while sitting on the rooftop of his house, Leo noticed something he hadn't before. A soft flicker, barely noticeable, but there nonetheless. His heart skipped a beat. The light. It was back. For the first time in weeks, Leo felt a strange sense of hope. It wasn't the same light he had seen before. It was different, brighter, and more defined. He quickly grabbed his notebook and began writing down the position of the flicker, just as he had done so many times before. This time, he had to get it right. He had to make sure someone knew about it. In the days that followed, the light grew brighter and larger. It seemed to be moving closer to Earth, just as Leo had predicted. But there was something unsettling about its appearance. It wasn't like any ship Leo had ever seen. It didn't have the sleek, metallic look of the spacecraft that the media showed. It was something different, organic, alive almost, pulsing like a heartbeat. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the light began to fade, slowly retreating into the dark expanse of space. Mira sat alone in her lab, her fingers resting on the cool surface of her desk. She had heard nothing from the alien ships, no new signals or messages, but she felt it, this gnawing sense that Earth was being watched, that every step was being weighed. She had seen this before in her research. Civilizations that had reached out, looking for something bigger, only to fall into the same traps as those before them. Trusting too easily, moving too quickly. She closed her eyes, thinking back to the words of the mysterious voice. Be careful who you trust. The voice had been calm, yet its warning was urgent. Mira understood now that Earth was facing a choice, a pivotal moment. It wasn't about power or technology. It was about trust, about understanding what they were truly inviting into their lives. She couldn't help but wonder what would happen if they chose wrong. The air outside was still. No birds, no sounds of animals. Just silence. Mira stepped outside, looking up at the stars. Somewhere, far above her, something was watching, waiting. But she wasn't afraid. In the quiet that followed, Earth seemed to stand still, caught between the unknown and the inevitable. The time was coming when the decision would be made, not just by governments or leaders, but by everyone. The weight of the choice was heavy. Would they trust the voices from the stars, or would they remain silent, waiting for something else to speak first? Mira turned away from the sky, taking a deep breath. Whatever came next, Earth would face it together. And together, they would decide. The days that followed felt like a haze, with each passing moment blending into the next. Mira's thoughts were consumed by the quiet tension she had felt since that mysterious voice had first warned them. The world was in a strange state of limbo. People moved as if everything were normal, but they were starting to sense it too. Something was different. And yet, the silence from the stars remained. As Mira sat at her desk, her mind wandered to the first time she had heard that eerie warning. Be careful who you trust. It had stayed with her, haunting her thoughts like an echo in the back of her mind. She wasn't sure what it meant, but she knew it was important. The message had come from somewhere, from someone, or something, that was no longer a part of Earth's world. They had left, or maybe they had been left behind. The idea that they had made a mistake, or even that they were trying to prevent Earth from making the same one, filled her with a strange sense of urgency. Ravi was deep in his work, trying to figure out how the system he had set up could decipher what the message meant. He had been quiet for days now, lost in the data. He had seen things that didn't make sense. Flashes of images on his screen, things that didn't belong. It was as if his mind was being pulled in different directions. He had tried to ignore it at first, but now he could no longer deny that something was happening, something beyond what they had prepared for. Late one night, after a long day of testing, Ravi noticed something strange. The screen in front of him flickered, and then for a brief moment, a strange shape appeared, something that resembled a human face, but only just. It was gone before he could fully comprehend what he had seen. He sat back, heart racing. He wasn't sure if it had been his imagination, or if it was a signal, a clue. But whatever it was, it felt like a message. It was then that he realized Earth wasn't being watched from afar. It was being pulled into something larger, something that had been waiting. The feeling of inevitability grew stronger. Leo, meanwhile, had grown increasingly obsessed with the light in the sky. He had seen it again that night, larger than before, pulsing in the darkness like a heartbeat. He had tried to tell his parents, but they dismissed his concerns, telling him it was just an odd reflection or a satellite passing through the sky. But Leo knew better. He had made a habit of going out late, setting his telescope in the backyard, and watching the stars. He had seen the light in different positions now, each time getting closer. And each time, it moved differently. It wasn't like a spaceship. It didn't travel in a straight line or in any predictable pattern. It was almost like it was searching, as if it was looking for something or someone. One evening, Leo decided to follow the light. He grabbed his backpack and sneaked out of the house, careful not to wake his parents. The night air was cool, crisp as he made his way toward the edge of town, where the light had appeared to move last. He didn't know why he was doing it. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was because he felt that no one else was paying attention to what was happening. But he felt drawn to it. He couldn't explain why, but he knew he had to find out. As he walked deeper into the forest, the light appeared again, brighter this time. Leo hurried, trying to keep up with it. The light was moving quickly now, shifting with strange precision. It was no longer just a flicker in the sky. It was real. It was something that had come for a reason. And then, it happened. The light stopped. It hovered in the air, casting an ethereal glow over the trees. Leo's heart raced, his breath coming in short gasps as he watched it. Frozen in place, he wasn't sure what to do. Should he approach it? Was it dangerous? But the light didn't move. It just stayed there, waiting, as if it was waiting for him to make the first move. Leo took a step forward. The light pulsed once, then slowly began to descend, lowering closer to the ground. He reached out, unsure of what he was doing, but compelled to do so all the same. He was standing mere feet from it now, and it felt like the air around him was charged with energy. Then, one night, the light returned again. But this time, it didn't move. It didn't flicker. It simply hovered there, steady and unyielding, casting its soft glow across the land. Leo stood there, transfixed, as the light seemed to grow brighter, its pulse more rhythmic, as if it were trying to communicate in a language only a few could understand. He wasn't sure what to do, but he knew this was the moment. The choice had come, and it wasn't just his to make. Earth had to decide. But how? For the first time, Leo felt a deep connection to the stars above, to the unseen forces that had been guiding him all along. He wasn't alone, and neither was the planet. This was the point of no return, where humanity would either rise or fall. Mira and Ravi met in secret, both of them coming to the same conclusion, though neither was ready to say it out loud. The Earth was being tested. This was no mere coincidence. The aliens, the ones who had watched Earth from afar, were offering them something. But what was it? And were they ready to accept? The governments of the world had begun to make their moves. Some were eager to engage, to reach out to the unknown, believing that this was their opportunity to become part of something greater. Others were hesitant, fearful of what such an invitation might truly mean. What would Earth lose in the process? What would they have to sacrifice in order to join the stars? As Mira sat in her office, she closed her eyes, letting the weight of the decision settle in. They couldn't be rash. They couldn't be impulsive. This was a choice for all of humanity, not just a select few. The stakes were too high. The cost of making the wrong decision was something they couldn't afford to even imagine. The light in the sky, though, was growing brighter still. It seemed to be reaching out, stretching across the heavens, drawing closer and closer to Earth. It was as if it were waiting for them to make up their minds, to decide whether to trust or to turn away. Every moment felt like a countdown, and Mira knew they couldn't afford to waste any more time. In the end, the choice was made, not by any one individual, but by humanity as a whole. There was no great speech, no grand declaration. Instead, it was the collective decision of everyone who had seen the light, who had felt its pull. The stars had called to them, and now they would answer. The silence that had once filled the world now gave way to something else, a feeling of unity, of purpose. The people of Earth had chosen. They had chosen to reach out, to listen, and to trust. Whether it would lead them to greatness or destruction, no one knew. But they had made the choice, and as the light from the stars grew brighter, and the first whispers of communication began, Earth knew that the journey had only just begun. The universe was vast, but now humanity had a place among the stars. The invitation had been accepted, and the future was waiting just beyond the horizon. But one thing was certain. They would never be the same again. Then a voice, soft, almost imperceptible, echoed through the night. "You have seen us. You have seen what others cannot." Leo's eyes widened. He had heard that voice before. In his dreams, in his thoughts. It was the same voice that had been warning Earth. The same one Mira had heard. The light flickered again, brighter, and the voice continued. "We are not here to harm you. We are here to guide. But only if you are willing to listen." Leo stood still, unable to move. His mind was racing. What did this mean? Was this the message Earth had been waiting for? Was this the warning? The light began to fade, slowly, just as mysteriously as it had appeared. But the voice stayed in his mind, repeating those words over and over again. "Listen." Leo felt a sense of calm wash over him. The fear he had felt moments before melted away. He understood now. The message wasn't just for him. It was for everyone. Earth wasn't alone. But it had to decide whether to listen, whether to reach out, or whether to remain in the dark. He made his way back home, the night air colder now. As he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Leo couldn't help but feel that the world was on the cusp of something monumental. He didn't know what would come next, but he knew this much. Earth would have to choose. And the choice was coming sooner than anyone could imagine. The days leading up to the final moment felt like a whirlwind, with time slipping away faster than anyone had anticipated. The world was changing, though no one could fully explain how. There was an underlying tension, a sense of something approaching, something inevitable. Mira, Ravi, Leo, and everyone around the world could feel it. It was as if the Earth itself was bracing for a decision, one that would echo through time and space. Mira spent her days at the lab, analyzing the data and trying to make sense of the fragments that had been sent to her. She had discovered something that both shocked and intrigued her. The signals, the ones that had started out as warnings, had begun to evolve. No longer were they just vague, ominous messages. They were specific now, pinpointing Earth's position in the universe, as if the unknown force had a deep understanding of where humanity stood. The more Mira delved into the signals, the more she realized that these weren't just random transmissions. These were precise, carefully constructed communications, meant for someone specific. Her heart raced as the implications became clear. The beings watching Earth weren't just observing. They were waiting for something, waiting for a response. But what were they waiting for? What was the choice Earth had to make? Across the globe, people had begun to feel the same sense of urgency. The once peaceful world had turned into a hive of activity, with governments scrambling to understand what was happening. But no matter how much technology they had, no matter how many experts they consulted, No one seemed to have the answers. Ravi had become consumed by the data, piecing together what little he could decipher. One thing had become apparent. Earth was on the edge of something monumental. The signals weren't warnings anymore. They were invitations. Invitations to join a larger, more complex community of beings that had traveled through time and space, and who understood the universe in ways humanity could only begin to grasp. But as Ravi sat alone in his office, staring at the screen, a chilling realization dawned on him. These beings, whoever they were, had seen civilizations rise and fall. They had watched countless worlds reach out, only to be lost in the vastness of the cosmos. What if Earth was about to make the same mistakes? What if the invitation was a test of trust, of wisdom, of humanity's ability to choose wisely? In the small town where Leo lived, things were no different. The night sky was still alive with the light, brighter than ever, and Leo had become obsessed with it. He had started talking to his friends about it, trying to convince them that they weren't just imagining things. He wasn't the only one who had noticed the strange flickers and pulses. More and more people were reporting strange phenomena. Lights in the sky, unusual sounds, unexplainable events. But despite the growing evidence, no one could come to an agreement on what it all meant.